My cousin shamed my autistic child in front of a crowd, then called child services and tried to get him taken from me. But she never saw what was coming. I'm Patricia. I'm 29 years old, and what I'm about to tell you is a story that still gives me chills when I remember it. It's about my 8-year-old son Matthew, who has autism, and my cousin Sandra, who thought she could publicly humiliate us without consequences. Spoiler alert, she was terribly wrong. The context you need to know. Matthew was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder when he was 4 years old. He's not one of those severe cases you see in movies. He talks, goes to regular school, is incredibly intelligent. But he has his quirks. He doesn't like loud noises, has very specific routines, and when he feels overwhelmed, he can have what we call meltdowns. Not tantrums, but moments where he simply can't process everything that's happening. My family, well, let's say, not everyone understood from the beginning. My parents are incredible. They supported me from the diagnosis, paid for therapies, educated themselves about autism, but the rest of the extended family, especially my dad's side, always had opinions. Sandra is my dad's sister's daughter. She's 32 years old, has 2 perfect children according to her, and never missed an opportunity to make comments about raising Matthew. He just needs more discipline. Back in my day, kids didn't have those excuses. If you were stricter with him. The tension had been building for years, but I always kept the peace for the family's sake. Matthew adored his grandparents, and I didn't want to create divisions. Plus, I worked part-time as an administrative assistant while studying to become a special education teacher. I didn't have time or energy for family fights. The day, everything changed. It was my grandfather's 70th birthday. The family had organized a big celebration at the local park. They rented tables, brought a live band, invited half the neighborhood. It was exactly the type of event Matthew finds difficult. Lots of people, unpredictable noise, changes in routine. But it was important to my grandfather, so I prepared everything carefully. I brought Matthew's noise-canceling headphones, some of his favorite toys, and planned that we could leave early if necessary. Everything was going well at first. Matthew was handling the situation well, even played a little with his younger cousins. But when the band started playing and the volume went up considerably, he began to feel overwhelmed. I noticed immediately, the signs any mother knows. Matthew started rocking slightly, covered his ears, and looked for me. I approached, put on his headphones and took him to a quieter area of the park where I'd prepared a blanket with his things. "Do you need a break, sweetheart?" I asked. He nodded and cuddled with me. He was handling the situation perfectly. This was exactly what we had practiced in therapy. But Sandra had been watching from afar. She approached with that fake smile I knew so well. "Patricia, don't you think it's time Matthew learned to behave like other children?" "He's fine, Sandra. He just needs a moment to regulate himself." "Regulate himself," she repeated sarcastically. "All the kids here are enjoying the party. He could do the same if you didn't baby him so much." I felt Matthew tense against me. He understood perfectly what was happening. "Sandra, please, this isn't the time." But she wasn't going to stop. She raised her voice loud enough for other family members to start turning around. "Look at this. Matthew is perfectly fine, but Patricia treats him like he's made of glass. In my day, if a kid acted like this, he'd get a good spanking and learn." Several cousins approached. My aunt, some neighbors who had been invited. Sandra was enjoying the audience. "Sandra, stop," I said, trying to stay calm. "You know what? I'm going to prove this kid is perfectly fine." And then she did it. Sandra went directly to the band and asked them to turn up the volume for the celebration. The noise became deafening. Matthew immediately decompensated. He took off his headphones, started screaming, not from a tantrum but from real sensory pain. He began hitting his legs, a self-injury that appeared when he was completely overwhelmed. My heart broke seeing my son in such a state of distress. But Sandra wasn't done. "Look," she shouted over the music. "It's pure theater. This kid has nothing wrong with him. He's just spoiled." She grabbed Matthew by the arm and tried to lift him from the blanket. "You're going to go over there and behave like a normal kid," Matthew screamed even louder. I immediately intervened. "Don't touch him. Someone has to put this kid in his place." The scene was horrible. My son was in complete crisis. Sandra was screaming about discipline and spoiled children, and there were about 20 people watching. Finally, my dad arrived and told Sandra to back off. I managed to calm Matthew enough to take him home, but the damage was done. I left my grandfather's party feeling humiliated, furious, and with my traumatized son. The last straw. I thought that would be the end of it, that Sandra would realize she had crossed a line and at least have the decency to apologize. How naive I was. 3 days later, I received a call I'll never forget. Patricia Gonzalez? Yes, that's me. This is Ms. Morales from Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report about possible neglect toward your son, Matthew. My blood ran cold. Excuse me? The person who reported alleged that you're not providing adequate medical care for your child's special needs and that you might be inappropriately medicating him to control him. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We need to schedule a home visit for this week. When I hung up the phone, my hands were shaking. I knew exactly who had made that call. Sandra had crossed from public humiliation to trying to get my child taken away. That night, after putting Matthew to bed, I cried until I had no tears left. But when I finished crying, something changed in me. This was no longer just about enduring for family peace. Sandra had attacked my child who already faced enough challenges without someone trying to destroy the stability of his life. It was time to stop being the victim. What Sandra didn't know. Here's where the story gets interesting, because Sandra had assumed some things about me that were very wrong. First, she thought I was just a secretary without resources or connections. What she didn't know is that for the past 2 years, I had been working part-time specifically because I was studying to become a certified special education teacher. It wasn't just any program. I was at a prestigious university with a full merit scholarship. Second, Sandra assumed I didn't have the resources to properly defend myself from a social services investigation. What she didn't know is that my maternal grandfather, my mom's dad, had passed away the previous year and left me a considerable inheritance. I wasn't a millionaire, but I had enough money saved to hire the best lawyers if necessary. But more important than money, Sandra didn't know that during my studies I had made important contacts. My supervising professor was Dr. Carmen Ruiz, one of the most recognized autism experts in the country. I had worked as a volunteer at several therapy centers where I met psychologists, occupational therapists, and other professionals. And Sandra definitely didn't know that the principal of the school where Matthew studied, Professor Michael Santos, was not only an exceptional educator, but also my university classmate in the master's program. Sandra thought she was attacking a vulnerable, single mother without resources. She was completely wrong. The investigation and my counterattack. The social worker who came to my house was professional but understandably serious. She reviewed everything. Matthew's living conditions, his medical records, his school reports, spoke with him, with a specialist present, and examined all his therapies and treatments. What she found was impeccable. Matthew had regular follow-ups with a pediatric neurologist specialized in autism. He attended occupational therapy, speech therapy, and behavioral therapy. His school reports showed consistent progress with the support of an individualized education plan. His room was adapted to his sensory needs. His medications, a magnesium supplement recommended by his doctor, were clearly labeled and administered correctly. In other words, I had done exactly everything any educated and responsible mother would do for a child with autism. Mrs. Gonzalez, the social worker told me, after her second visit, it's evident that this report lacks foundation. Your son is receiving exceptional care. We're going to close the case. But then she added something interesting. Between us, the person who made the report provided very specific but completely incorrect information about your son's condition, almost as if they had researched autism on the internet for 5 minutes and then invented problems that don't exist. That's when I knew with absolute certainty it had been Sandra. Once the investigation was closed, it was my turn. My revenge is called education. The first thing I did was schedule a meeting with Dr. Carmen Ruiz. I explained the whole situation, not just the incident at the party, but years of ignorant comments and finally the false report to social services. Patricia, Dr. Ruiz told me after hearing everything, what you describe isn't just ignorance. It's systematic harassment toward a family that's handling autism in an exemplary way and making a false report to social services that could have legal consequences. But I didn't want legal consequences. I wanted something better. Doctor, I have a different idea. I explained my plan. Dr. Ruiz smiled. That smile I saw when she knew someone was about to learn an important lesson. It sounds perfect to me. Count me in. Step 1. I contacted my cousin Anna, Sandra's sister, who had always been more reasonable. I told her about the false report to social services. Anna was horrified. Patricia, I didn't know Sandra had gone that far. What she did at the party was wrong, but this is too much. Anna, I need you to help me with something. It's going to be for the good of the whole family, especially Sandra's children. Step 2. I convinced Anna to organize an educational talk about autism for the entire extended family. I would present it as a way for everyone to better understand Matthew's needs and create a more inclusive environment at family gatherings. Of course, Sandra didn't want to attend, but Anna convinced her by telling her it would be an opportunity for Patricia to finally receive the education she needs about how to handle her child. Sandra thought it was going to be a session where experts would agree with her that Matthew needed more discipline. What a surprise awaited her. The trap closes. The educational talk was organized at Anna's house on a Saturday afternoon. Practically the entire extended family attended. My uncles, cousins, and of course Sandra, with her husband and 2 children. What Sandra didn't know is that I had invited some special experts. Dr. Carmen Ruiz arrived, introduced as an autism specialist from the university. Professor Michael Santos also came, introduced as an educator specialized in special needs. And to complete the panel, I invited Licenciada Andrea Lopez, a social worker specialized in child protection, whom I had met during my studies. Sandra arrived with that condescending attitude I knew so well. She clearly expected the experts to confirm that I was overprotecting Matthew. Dr. Ruiz began with a basic presentation about what autism really is. She explained the neurological aspects, sensory challenges, and different ways it manifests. Sandra interrupted several times with comments like, "But those kids can learn to control themselves if they have the right discipline, right?" Dr. Ruiz corrected her professionally each time, explaining why those comments showed a fundamental misunderstanding about autism. Then came Professor Santos, who talked about effective educational strategies and the importance of family support. But the climactic moment came when Licenciada Lopez spoke about child protection and autism. One of the most tragic situations we see, explained Lic. Lopez, is when well-meaning but misinformed family members make false reports to social services based on misunderstandings about autism. Sandra tensed up. These false reports not only traumatize families that are already facing significant challenges, but also take resources away from cases that really need intervention. Licenciada Lopez continued. For example, we recently had a case where someone reported a mother for inappropriately medicating her autistic child, when in reality the child only took vitamin supplements recommended by his doctor. The entire room turned to look at Sandra, who had gone completely pale. Fortunately, added Lic. Lopez, our investigation showed the mother was providing exceptional care, but now we're investigating who made the false report because that constitutes a crime. The final revelation. After the presentations, they opened the floor for questions and comments. My Aunt Maria, Anna's mother, was the first to speak. I have to admit I didn't understand why Patricia spoiled Matthew so much. After hearing this, I realized she's doing exactly the right thing. Several other family members expressed similar feelings. Then Sandra, clearly desperate to regain some control, stood up. All this is very nice, but Patricia is still exaggerating. Matthew could behave normally if she didn't treat him like he was so fragile. The room fell silent. Dr. Ruiz looked at her directly. Ma'am, could you tell me what your professional experience with autism spectrum disorder is? Well, I'm a mother, and I know what See? I understand. Patricia, could you share with the group your experience and preparation for handling Matthew's needs? It was my moment. Of course, Doctor. Besides being Matthew's mother for 8 years, I'm currently completing my master's in special education with a specialization in autism spectrum disorders at State University. I have certifications in applied behavior analysis, sensory crisis management, and augmentative communication. I've worked as a volunteer at 3 different therapy centers for the past 2 years. The faces around the room showed surprise. Most of the family didn't know about my studies. I continued. I've also attended over 50 hours of specialized workshops. I'm a member of the National Autism Association, and I work in direct collaboration with Matthew's multidisciplinary team that includes a neurologist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, and behavioral psychologist. Sandra looked like she had seen a ghost. Additionally, I added, I recently completed research on family inclusion strategies for children with autism that will be published in the Special Education Journal next semester. Dr. Ruiz smiled. Patricia is one of our most outstanding students. Her approach with Matthew is textbook, exactly what we recommend to all families. Sandra's collapse. Sandra stood there, clearly realizing she had completely underestimated who she was up against. But I wasn't finished. My Aunt Rosa, who had been especially quiet, finally spoke. Sandra, I have to ask you something directly. Were you the one who called social services to report Patricia? The room filled with tension. Sandra stammered. Someone had to. Patricia wasn't. Yes or no? Asked my Aunt Rosa louder. Yes. Someone had to protect that child from his overprotective mother. The silence that followed was deafening. Leak. Lopez cleared her throat. Ma'am, making a false report to Child Protective Services is a serious crime. Penalties include significant fines and possible jail time. Sandra collapsed in her chair. My Uncle Carlos, Sandra's husband, looked at her with an expression I had never seen before. Sandra, did you try to get Patricia's child taken away? I believed that. Did you try to get her child taken away? Carlos's voice echoed through the entire room. Sandra began to cry, but there was no sympathy for her anymore. My grandfather, who had been silent during the entire presentation, finally spoke. Sandra, get out of my sight. I never want to see you in my house again. The immediate consequences. What happened next was like watching a house of cards fall. Carlos was furious, not just because of what Sandra had done, but because he realized he had been living with someone capable of trying to destroy a family out of pure malice. Sandra's children, who had heard the entire conversation, were confused and embarrassed. Her oldest son, 12 years old, approached me before leaving. Aunt Patricia, I'm so sorry, Mum was wrong. That moment broke my heart for all the right reasons. The family immediately split into two sides. Those who were absolutely horrified by Sandra's actions, and, well, there really wasn't another side. No one defended what she had done. My Aunt Anna hugged me, crying. Patricia, I had no idea Sandra had gone that far. If I had known, don't worry, Anna. What matters is that now the whole family understands the situation. But the most important conversation came from my grandfather. After everyone left, he asked me to stay. Mija, he said, I didn't know you were studying to be a special education teacher. I didn't want to show off, Grandpa. Show off? Patricia, I'm proud of you. All this time I thought you were a single mother struggling alone, but you've been building a career to help children like Matthew. He took my hands. I want you to know something. I also put money toward your education. I didn't understand at first. Remember the scholarship you received for university? It wasn't just for academic merit. I supplemented the scholarship because I believed in you. I was speechless. Your grandmother and I have been following your progress. We know about your grades, about your research, about everything. We were waiting for you to graduate to tell you. I started crying again, but this time from pure gratitude. And one more thing, added my grandfather. Sandra is no longer welcome at any family gathering as long as I'm alive. Update 1. 3 months later. It's been 3 months since the incident, as we call it in the family, and the repercussions have been interesting. First, Sandra and Carlos separated. He took the kids and filed for divorce. During the process, it came to light that Sandra had been harassing other families in the neighborhood with special needs children. Carlos was absolutely horrified to discover his wife's pattern of behavior. Sandra's children now live with Carlos, and surprisingly, he has become very close to our family. His kids adore Matthew and have learned a lot about autism. It's beautiful to see them play together without Sandra's constant comments. As for my education, I graduated with honors from my master's program. Dr. Ruiz offered me a position as a research assistant while I complete my doctoral certification. I also received a job offer at Matthew's school as an autism specialist, but the best part is how the family dynamic has changed. My uncles and cousins now genuinely understand autism. My uncle Roberto even offered to build a sensory area in his house for when we visit. Matthew is thriving. His meltdowns have decreased significantly now that he doesn't have to deal with Sandra's constant comments. His self-esteem has improved notably. And Sandra apparently moved to another city. According to what I heard through Anna, she's living with her sister and working at a call center. She lost custody of her children, her house, and the entire extended family. Sometimes I feel bad for her. Then I remember she tried to get my child taken away, and it passes. Update 2. 1 year later. 1 year after the incident, my life has completely changed, for the better. I became the director of the autism support program in the school district. My research on family inclusion was published in 3 academic journals, and now I'm regularly invited to give conferences on the topic. Matthew, who is now 9 years old, is thriving in ways I never thought possible. His new school, where I work, has an incredible inclusion program, and he's making genuine friends for the first time. But the best part is that I met someone special. David is an occupational therapist who works with autistic children. We met at a professional conference, and when I told him Sandra's story, he said he had gone through something similar with his autistic brother. David understands Matthew in a way I never thought would be possible. He doesn't just accept him, he celebrates him. Seeing them play together fills my heart in an indescribable way. Carlos and I remain close. He brings his children to all family gatherings, and they consider Matthew their favorite cousin. It's incredible how children can adapt and accept when adults don't fill them with prejudices. As for Sandra, well, I learned through Anna that she lost her job at the call center. Apparently, her problematic attitude wasn't limited to families with autistic children. Who would have thought that someone so full of poison would have trouble maintaining any positive relationships? Anna told me that Sandra tried to contact her to ask her to intercede with the family to give her another chance. Anna told her exactly what we all thought, that she had crossed an unforgivable line when she tried to destroy my family. Final update. 2 years later. Now 2 years later, I can honestly say that what Sandra tried to do to us ended up being the best thing that could have happened to us. David and I got married last month in a small and beautiful ceremony. Matthew was our ring bearer, his idea, and his speech at the reception didn't leave a dry eye. His ability to express love and gratitude in unique ways is one of the many wonderful things about autism that Sandra could never see. Professionally, my career has taken off in ways I never imagined. I published a book on family inclusion strategies for children with autism that has become a reference text at several universities. I receive consultations from families across the country. Matthew, now 10 years old, is in 5th grade and is one of the most popular students in his class. Not because he's cured of his autism, because he's learned to navigate the world being authentically himself, and his classmates respect him for that. I did something special this year. I created a scholarship for low-income families who have children with autism. It's called the Sandra Scholarship, not to honor her, but to ensure that her ignorance never damages another family again. The irony isn't lost on me. Sandra tried to destroy us because she thought I was a single mother, without resources or education. Her actions motivated me to prove exactly the opposite. And now I use my position to protect other families from people like her. Last year I received a letter. It was from Sandra. I didn't open it. I passed it directly to my lawyer, who advised me to keep it as evidence in case she tried to contact again. I have no interest in knowing what she has to say. Some people deserve second chances. People who try to destroy families to satisfy their ego are not in that category. My life is now filled with love, purpose, and the deep satisfaction of knowing I turned Sandra's poison into medicine for other families. Matthew told me something last week that perfectly encapsulates how I feel. Mommy, do you remember when Aunt Sandra was mean to me? Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad that happened. Why, Matthew? Because if she hadn't been mean, you wouldn't have learned so much to help other kids like me. And I wouldn't have David as a dad. Out of the mouths of babes. Sandra wanted to shame my autistic child and destroy our family. Instead, she catalyzed a transformation that led us to a fuller, more purposeful and happier life than I ever imagined possible. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't hurting those who hurt you. Sometimes, the best revenge is building something so beautiful with the broken pieces that your enemy realizes they didn't just fail to destroy you, they made you stronger. Final CTA. And that's my story. What did you think? Do you believe Sandra deserved everything that happened to her? Or was I too harsh? Have you had to deal with toxic family members who don't understand special needs? Leave me your opinions in the comments. I love reading your perspectives and similar experiences. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more satisfying revenge stories and poetic justice. Sharing the video also helps me reach more people. And speaking of more incredible stories, on your screen right now, you have another story you're going to love, about a mother-in-law who thought she could control her daughter-in-law's life until she discovered who really had the power. Click to keep enjoying the channel's content.